bad thing. I think it just is what it is. Now, take that concept, keep that in the back of your mind, and now listen to what he says in note 75. Second sentence. But nothing looks more wretched than when a shoemaker or a schoolmaster gives us to understand with a suffering mien, right, sort of a disposition, that he was really born for something better. There's nothing more aggravating than the schoolmaster who says that he was born for something better. So he's lecturing to you, but he always wanted to be something else. I just ended up being an educator because this is my plan B, is what Nietzsche is saying. This is my fallback. And insofar as this is my fallback, you can imagine the type of education you're going to get. It's going to be a horrible style of education. Personally, on a quick FYI side note, I think this is what's plaguing the American educational institution, is that so many people wanted to be other things in their life, couldn't be those other things, and became educators as a fallback, and that's the problem, right? They're very pessimistic. So, nothing looks more wretched than a shoemaker or a schoolmaster who was really born for something better, right? There is nothing better than what is good, and good is having some ability to use that to create. Underline create 10 times, right? There is nothing better than what is good, and good is having some ability. Good is having some ability, not total ability. Good is having some ability and using that to create. Now, you have the individual, right? You have the individual, and this individual has some ability, right? Whatever it might be, right? Whatever your ability might be. If you're a good orator, if you're a good cook, if you're a good dancer, if you're a good artist, if you're a good interpreter, if you're a good translator, whatever it might be, right? That ability, right? That ability, and this is note 75, right? That ability, Nietzsche says, there is nothing better than what is good. And good is having some ability, right? So this is good, right? Having some ability is good. Right? Good is having some ability. And using that ability, right? You want to use this ability that you have to do what? To create, right? Right? Very, 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 very important. So, and then I'm going to tie all of this in a second, but it's a bit complicated, so I'm going to go slow. There is nothing better than what is good, and good is having some ability and using that ability to create. Next paragraph. Today, in our time, when the state has an absurdly fat stomach, I love this, right? Today, in our time, when the state has an absurdly fat stomach, there are in all fields and departments, in addition to real workers, also representatives. Now, before we get too deep into the representatives, we need to understand how this ties in, right? How do we tie in note 71, and this is note 71, right? How do we tie in the concept in note 71 to what he says, right? Having some ability, that idea of having some ability is good, and using that good to create, right? What you have to recognize, and this is critically important, if you're still watching the video at this point, then, you know, more power to you, because we're pretty deep in, right? We're you know, hours and hours, 11 hours in. If this is key. 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 The information that you consume. Think of the metaphor that he says, right? The information that you consume, the stuff that you input, the stuff that you eat, in a sense, right? Let's just stick sort of ghetto philosophy, right? I eat healthy food, I have a healthy body. I eat bad food, I have a bad body. Okay, everybody understands that. As an academic, I go around and I spend my life eating bite-sized information. I eat Cliff Notes throughout my entire high school education. I eat Cliff Notes throughout my entire college education. I eat Cliff Notes throughout my entire graduate education. I become an academic, and now it's my turn to create. what's inside of me is nothing more than cliff notes. All I've spent my life doing is reading secondary accounts of, or even tertiary accounts of some loosely, vaguely described meaning. It's been distilled and anything of substance has been lost, right? This Cliff Notes approach to education is paralyzing, right? This Cliff Notes approach to education is paralyzing, right? This bite-sized information without complexity, right? And I want to read this again, right? Because this is not me making this up, right? I don't want you to think, oh, this is Dr. Campbell sort of putting it in his own bin, right? Nietzsche says, note 71, one instinctively resists taking anything deeply to digest anything. Taking anything deeply, you don't want it to be deep. You don't want it to be profound. You want it to be easy. You want it to be bite-sized bits of readily understood information. You want it to, no offense to Cliff Notes, right? But you want it to be a Cliff Notes. The person who's actually read Will to Power, I don't even know if they have a Cliff Notes Will to Power, but the person who's actually read Will to Power, as we are doing right now, on this insanely deep level of read, this meticulously overdone, overkill level of assessment, versus the guy who, or the gal who picks up the 15-page Cliff Notes to read it, who's going to have more understanding? Who's going to have a better ability to create? Where is this ability coming from? This ability is internalized, right? Really and truly, I should draw it like this, right? I should draw it like this. Right? Right? If all that I'm taking in is bite-sized bits of information, and that is internalized into who I am as a scholar, and it's been my whole life of Cliff Notes. I haven't really engaged the text. I haven't really immersed the text. I haven't really taken time to prepare notes. I haven't really taken time to present. This is why, in the next call for video responses, you should, I'm not saying that you have to, but you should attempt to do it. Not for me, I'm good. This is for you, right? Because in presenting the lecture, in going about reading this and presenting it, you get a deeper sense of understanding, right? Bite-sized bits of information is going to create just a little bit of creative ability, and what you're going to get is, you know, meager creation, right? Your creative ability, your ability to do new stuff, your ability to contribute new stuff is going to be sort of bite-sized, right? It's going to be, yeah, that was cool, it's new, but, you know, there's nothing really profound about what you're doing, right? If you sit down and you literally start, I want to be a bibliophage, right? You just start eating, you consume, you literally, as Nietzsche says, right? Let's look at the metaphor. I start eating, you know, I should do a video where I just eat a page from a book. I would eat a page from Will to Power. It'd probably be Note 12b, but you start eating it, you take it deep. This is absurd. I apologize. I'm a bit manic now, and I see that, but I think you get the idea, right? Don't do bite-sized stuff, right? Bite-sized bits of info, non-complex, easily to digest, easily to understand. You're not going to get nourishment off of that, right? I love his metaphor, right? It's not going to be nourishing. And the stuff that you create, the stuff that you produce is going to be right? If you go in, right? If you go in, if you really consume, if you really dig deep, if you really break off large pieces and try to make sense of it, then the stuff that you create is going to be profound, right? People are going to have to take time to understand what the hell it is that you're doing, right? Somebody like Tupac, right? It's not easy. For me, this is hella powerful, right? This is epically powerful. Why? Because this ties into what we said before, right? What Nietzsche is doing, in a sense, is he's laying out more than a system of what, this is my interpretation of Nietzsche, is that instead, and I said this in previous videos, instead of laying out this system, it's more of a lifestyle, right? Do you want to be the type of person that lives the life of consuming crap your whole life? Do you want to consume, as an academic now, right? The metaphor is now with respect to knowledge. Do you want to consume bite-sized bits of information? Insofar as you nourish yourself on bite-sized bits of information, the only thing you'll be able to produce is insignificant facts, per se, right? In scare quotes. You're not really going to be able to do anything that galvanizes the population, that speaks to some higher accord. And what Nietzsche wants us to do is to stop doing that, right? So I think the tie-in between note 7